This is Mac OS Ken.
Look for more of the same from Wall Street today. The White House tries to pin Signalgate on iPhone, and the jury's reached a verdict in an Apple bribery case. It is Monday, the 7th of April, 2025. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. I read something Sunday that caused what felt like a physical reaction. It was something between my heart skipping and having the wind knocked out of me. From a piece on Apple 3.0 that had Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring posting answers to top Apple investor questions, the combo that knocked me back was the question, what hardware names would you buy the dip on tomorrow? Followed by the answer, none. Analysts, it seems, have no clear indication of when things might turn around. Sunday night on the East Coast, Yahoo Finance said U.S. stock futures plunged Sunday evening, setting up Wall Street for another bruising day on Monday, as markets brace for more fallout from President Trump's fast-moving tariff policy. Futures tied to the S&P 500 plummeted around 4%, while those on the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost 4.8%. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures sank 3.9%, or over 1,400 points. So, it's practically bound to be a more of the same Monday. Honestly, between you and me, I have no idea how to begin to talk about all of this or continue after my unfunny spoken word version of Take My Breath Away. Another piece on the Woodring note, this one from Apple Insider, says investment bank Morgan Stanley has told investors that while Apple may have brought forward some iPhone 16 production ahead of Trump's new tariffs, there is little more it can do to mitigate a $33 billion cost increase it is about to incur. The Wall Street Journal's Joanna Stern says the reality of the Trump tariffs could be a bajillion-dollar iPhone, give or take half a bajillion, I guess. While a 256-gigabyte iPhone 16 Pro costs the average consumer $1,099, Stern says it costs Apple an estimated $580. That's $550 for parts, and an obscenely low-sounding $30 for labor. Even when you account for Apple's advertising budget and all the included services, says the piece, there is still a healthy profit margin. Now, she says, factor in the newly announced tariff for goods from China, which currently totals 54%. The cost rises to around $850. That profit margin would shrink dramatically if Apple didn't up the price. And you don't become a trillion-dollar gadget company by charging for things at cost. So what about an American-made iPhone? Wouldn't that at least save on tariffs? Well, the parts would still have to be imported, tariffs and all. You'd have to train people to put them together, and you'd have to pay them. One analyst cited by the Journal thinks the cost for labor would go up from $30 per phone in China to as much as $300 in the US. And yeah, if you want those parts built in the States, same again for each part. Not surprisingly, Apple declined to comment on its pricing plans or manufacturing details, even for the vaunted Wall Street Journal. Now maybe you think Apple will be able to talk Trump into tariff exemptions. You're part of a shrinking crowd if you do. Back to his Apple investor Q&A list, Morgan Stanley's Woodring says he and his gauge the odds of a targeted tariff exemption for Apple at 20%. Reason being, the fundamental process of getting a tariff exemption is different this time around. During the first Trump administration, companies had weeks to formally respond to tariff lists and provide feedback or reasons for specific product exemptions. This time, the Trump administration has implemented global tariffs through the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which means no formal product list was presented in advance, and there is no official process for requesting tariff exemptions. Therefore, for Apple to receive an exemption, it would have to be a company-specific exemption granted specifically by the president. At this point, we believe it is unlikely, he says, but subject to change. And no, Woodring doesn't think the $500 billion in U.S. spending commitments Apple announced earlier this year will sway the administration. Despite the mounds of uncertainty, Morgan Stanley maintains an overweight rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $252. Now, if you want to hear something that would have been practically unthinkable 2 weeks ago, the $252 price target on Apple shares set by Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring is higher than the target held by Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives. Because am I right? Apple 3.0 posted part of a note Ives wrote on Sunday, quoting that, the tariff let me stress this, this is quoting Daniel Ives, the tariff economic Armageddon unleashed by Trump is a complete disaster for Apple given its massive China production exposure. In our view, no U.S. tech company is more negatively impacted by these tariffs than Apple, with 90% of iPhones produced and assembled in China. We have seen Apple navigate very uncertain times in the supply chain during COVID, but for the stock, it was feasible for investors and us at the time to look past March or June of 2020 quarters and understand and value what normalized 2021 earnings could look like as normalization would happen. This tariff situation is dramatically different, he continues, and a very scary prospect, as the current tariff slate with China at 54% and Taiwan at 32% would be devastating to Apple, its cost structure, and ultimately consumer demand. It's not a debate, in our view. Still got an outperform rating on Apple shares. He cut his 12-month price target, though, from $325 to $250. It seems unlikely that he'll be the last to pull that cord. Apple starts trading today around $187. Here's one that would be funny if it weren't so blessed serious. A piece from TechCrunch has the White House blaming iPhone for the whole Signal Megillah. I honestly don't remember whether we've talked about this here. A Wikipedia post sums it up well. A group of U.S. national security leaders had a group chat on the consumer messaging platform Signal about an imminent attack to be carried out in Yemen. Participants included Vice President Vance, top White House staff, 3 cabinet secretaries, and the directors of 2 intelligence community agencies. Among them was National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who accidentally added Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of the American magazine The Atlantic, to the chat group. After all sorts of baseless accusations from the administration, everything from Goldberg snuck in somehow to Trump saying maybe there was a problem with Signal, TechCrunch cites a report from The Guardian that has the White House blaming iPhone. According to the piece, an investigation by White House IT has an iPhone auto-suggestion playing a key role. After Goldberg emailed the White House for comment on the story, a Trump spokesperson, Brian Hughes, texted the contents of Goldberg's email to Waltz. As a result, Waltz's iPhone offered a contact suggestion update that ultimately saved Goldberg's phone number under Hughes' name. Then, when Waltz tried to add Hughes, now a spokesperson for the National Security Council, to the chat, he supposedly ended up adding Goldberg instead. Now, even if all of that is true, and there is seriously little reason to assume that it is, but even if all of that is true, maybe that's why you don't use consumer-grade tech and apps found in the App Store when planning a military strike. Just a thought. The BBC has a bit of a daft complaint against Apple and Google. According to a piece from Apple Insider, The British Broadcasting Corporation has complained to a UK antitrust authority that Apple and Google's news services, such as Apple News, diminish its branding by downplaying where it gets its news stories. The piece says because the BBC gets its budget from a unique license fee model, it depends on worldwide brand recognition and respect for its efforts to justify its funding. So, I guess they want the logo to be bigger or something? According to the report, the BBC is asking UK regulators to require Apple and Google to give more prominence to the sources of news stories it features in its news and podcast apps. While such a ruling would theoretically only apply to UK sources, the two tech giants would likely apply those regulations to all news sources. But every story in Apple News and Apple stocks has the logo of the news organization that put it out. I guess they want the logo to be bigger. Seriously, I don't get this story. And finally today, remember the story from 2020? When Apple security chief Thomas Moyer was accused of bribery while trying to obtain concealed carry permits for Apple security people. Talk at the time was that the sheriff's office was holding on the permits until Moyer arranged for the donation of 200 iPads to the sheriff's department. A piece from Apple Insider says the case was dismissed in 2021, then reopened in 2023. Now it is over. For real this time. That Apple Insider piece says a Santa Clara County Superior Court jury found Thomas Moyer not guilty. Sounds like somebody's earned a trip to Chuck E. Cheese's, doesn't it? macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.